Does every trip that you take with points and miles have to be a massive aspirational redemption? Or is it okay just to get solid value sometimes while taking a rather mundane trip somewhere? Hi, everybody. Dugroz here with Dugroz Reports. Today, I'm going to tell you about one such trip that I took recently to visit some family members and do some activities in the area around Chicago, Illinois. First up, though, some background on why this trip even happened. My wife is a teacher, and to start the second semester, she had in-service meetings. Now, we could just let them sit around and rot their brains playing video games all day, but instead, I took that 3-day period plus the subsequent weekend off work, and we took a 4-day trip to see family members in the Chicago area. That's where my sister lives, along with her husband. This was actually a dual purpose. There was the purpose of seeing family, and then there was the points and miles purpose, and I was able to merge those two purposes. What I had was a few loose ends that I wanted to tie up. One loose end was with IHG. My wife and I both have the IHG card that is issued by Chase that gives a free night certificate. She has the personal version. I have the business version. And that renews in May of 2024. So that's when the free night certificate will expire. My wife and I don't have any travel planned together between now and May. And honestly, she's probably not going anywhere on a trip by herself between now and May. So I was wondering, would I be able to use her free night certificate? Unfortunately, you cannot transfer it from person to person, but I wanted to try to use it up before it expired. I did also want to do that experiment during a time where it was not peak travel season, so that if something went wrong when we got to the IHG hotel, for example, if the front desk clerk informed me that the person who held the rewards account had to be present, I'd rather do it at a time where not all the rooms are booked up, and I definitely picked a good time for that. We stayed in the Chicago area for a total of 3 days, and for the first of those 3 days, I selected this hotel, the Holiday Inn and Suites Chicago Northwest, located in the suburb of Elgin, Illinois. And this ended up being a very nice stay. They had a pool and a hot tub. Because of my wife's IHG credit card, she also has platinum status with IHG. Although there's nothing in the terms and conditions that says you have to get a free breakfast, in this case, the Holiday Inn offered us a choice for our welcome amenity. We could either get vouchers for a free breakfast, or we could take 500 points. Well, those 500 points are only worth about $2.50 to at most about $3.50. So the breakfast vouchers made way more sense. So they did give us some perks for being platinum. The fact that my wife was not there was really not an issue at all. I was still able to use her free night certificate. And in fact, they gave us a room upgrade. When I arrived, I mentioned that we had requested connecting rooms. Now, they had not originally booked us into connecting rooms, because when you use the free night certificate, it has to be on a whole separate booking. So I had 2 separate one-night bookings, one room for me, one room for the boys. And I asked for them to be connecting, and they said something like, as long as we're going to do connecting rooms, might as well upgrade one of them. And they gave me a king suite, which connected to a standard 2-queen bedroom for the boys. And it was very nice. As far as the math on that, the value ended up being somewhere in the range of 0.89 cents per point and 0.96 cents per point. I gave a range because the way it worked out is that the lower figure is based on what we originally booked. The higher figure is based on what it would have been after the upgrade. So needless to say, it's a good value. IHG points can frequently be purchased for half a cent each. So as long as you're clearing 0.5 cents per point, you're at least breaking even. In my book, anything that's 0.7 cents per point or better is a good value. Now, the second loose end that I wanted to tie up on this trip was using up some gift cards from Hotels.com. Here's a wrapper of a Hotels.com gift card. I don't have the actual card itself anymore, but that's the cardboard thing that came with it. The reason why I had several Hotels.com gift cards is because when I first entered the points and miles game back in 2019, I didn't have enough points to cover everything. So there were a couple trips where I used Hotels.com to pay for the lodging. At the time, that made sense for two reasons. One is Hotels.com used to have a pretty good rewards program where they would give you every 10th night free based on your average booking. About a year ago, they nerfed that, and it's just not as good as it used to be. The second reason is because you could frequently buy Hotels.com gift cards at a discount by using, say, one Amex point or one Chase point. You would often get 20, 30, even 40% off. At one time, I had amassed over $500 worth of Hotels.com gift cards. But as this trip was approaching, I was down to $150 worth. And because of some rules on Hotels.com and how many times you can combine their gift cards, I had one card for $100 and one card for $50 that could not be combined or used in the same booking. So for our middle night of the 3-night stay, I decided to use Hotels.com to book the Embassy Suites by Hilton in the Chicago suburb of Deerfield. Here's a spreadsheet of all my different expenses for this trip. I always keep track of all my vacation or trip expenses down to the penny because I like to account for everything on a trip, whether it's a small rip trip or a big family vacation. In the lodging section, you'll see that this is the cost for that Hotels.com Embassy Suites. One night, or not one night, but one room was $157. One was $147. Again, got two rooms, one for me, one for the boys, and booked them on separate days, which is why the prices were slightly different. So roughly $300, and I had enough Hotels.com gift card credit to cover half of that. So about $150 out of pocket, but not really out of pocket. I'll come back to how I paid for the cash part in just a few moments. So that was the second night with Hotels.com. For the third night, we didn't want to change hotels. We wanted to stay at the Embassy Suites, but I had no reason to use Hotels.com again. I'd already used them up. So I decided to take a look at what my options were. Now, for the specific night that we stayed, or nights that we stayed, it was 68,000 Hilton points if I had paid with points. That is based on the cash price of $291.94. And if you divide that by the 68,000, that comes out to 0.429 cents per point. Now, Hilton points, much like IHG points, can frequently be purchased for half a cent each. Therefore, if you're not getting at least half a cent in value, that's a bad redemption. Again, I generally aim for at least somewhere around 0.7 cents per point with Hilton when making a redemption. But there was another option as well. Of course, you might be thinking paying the cash price, which I could. I could just take the $291 out of a savings account. But I could also use Ultimate Rewards. And you might be wondering, how could you use Chase Ultimate Rewards to pay for a Hilton stay? They aren't even transfer partners with Hilton. Well, that's where my Aeroplan card that is issued by Chase comes into play. You see, the Aeroplan card has a pay yourself back feature where you can indirectly cash out for travel at 1.25 cents per point. But it actually gets a little bit better than that because Chase has run a couple of bonuses on transferring the Aeroplan points at a 20% bonus, and I took advantage of one of those. Additionally, if you transfer at least 50,000 Chase UR points over to Aeroplan, there's a built-in 10% bump that already happens. So a 20% bump and a 10% bump, that's effectively transferring at a rate of 1 to 1.3 from Chase to Aeroplan. And then that 1.3 can be redeemed at a ratio of 1.25 cents per point. Well, if you take 1.3 times 1.25, that's 1.625, or basically 1 5/8. And that is the ratio at which you indirectly cash out your Chase Ultimate Rewards. So that's exactly what I did. I took advantage of one of those transfer bonuses, moved over 50,000 Chase points, and used it here to cover both the cash part of the Hotels.com stay and the third full night where we paid Hilton directly. If we take a look back at the spreadsheet, so we'll see that my room was $110.19. The boys' room was $176.29. That is a slightly different price than what was in the graphic. For some reason, it ended up being about $5 cheaper than what I initially calculated. If they're going to give me it for $5 less, I'm not going to complain. So the lodging altogether came to $591.96, not taking the gift cards into account. And that averages $147.99 per night. $147 for a room is a fairly inexpensive cash price, so I didn't mind paying cash in this case. I do not have an affiliate of any kind link with the Aeroplan card, but I will put a link to that card down below. I will also put a link to the IHG credit cards, both personal and business, down below. I do have a refer a friend for that, so if you use one of those, it will support the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. Before I go any further, I will also mention that on this particular YouTube channel, I talk about finding epic value, including, but not limited to, credit card rewards for the average American. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and please click the thumbs up button. So let's move on and come back to the spreadsheet to calculate all of our costs. So we did eat food while we were there, and that totaled $208.70. Of note, I will mention that there was a restaurant inside the Embassy Suites called Cadwell's, and on the third night, we did eat there and asked them to charge it to our room. Now, the great thing about doing that, charging it to your room, is it'll show up as a travel expense as part of your hotel bill, and therefore you can use the Aeroplan card to pay yourself back at 1.625 cents per point. We got some snacks with two teenage boys. You always have to have snacks. That came out to about $43. I drove my personal vehicle and spent about $69 on gas. There were a few miscellaneous expenses. We went to the Illinois Holocaust Museum, which is located in Skokie, Illinois. That was a sombering experience, of course, and I wouldn't say it was fun or exciting, but it was definitely something worth doing. I would recommend it. That came out to $37. Me and the two boys went to the Lego Discovery Center in Schaumburg, Illinois, and that was about $78. That was a fun thing to do, but if you have kids that are teenagers and above, just note that it's not quite on their level. We were just a little bit disappointed because it's really tailored for kids 11 and under, roughly. But we did it, so I had to include it as one of our miscellaneous expenses. There was no public transit of any kind, so we're ready to look at the totals here. The total trip, all these expenses without going over any credits, was $1,031.41. We used those two Hotels.com gift cards totaling $150. We also got about $13 in refunds from Hotels.com. A tip that I would mention about Hotels.com is if you make a booking and then you notice later the price goes down, if you change any part of your booking, it'll recalculate it for you, and if it's a lower price, give you a refund. I wrote cash reimbursements of $12 because sometimes when we stop at a gas station and get snacks, I'll say something like, boys, if you want to get snacks, I'll pay for it for you up to $3. If they get something more expensive than $3, they have to use their own money. So it went on my credit card, but they gave me some cash back. The Aeroplan Pay Yourself Back was able to be used for several things. I was able to use it for Cadwell's, the restaurant at Embassy Suites, and then all 4 nights at the Embassy Suites, 2 on Hotels.com, as well as 2 paid directly to Hilton. And that came to a total with Pay Yourself Back of $509.07. So the subtotal is $346.45. $346, a dad, 2 teenage boys, 3-day weekend, really almost 4 days if you count the driving. $346 isn't too bad whatsoever. Now, I will need to transfer that money from my travel savings account. That's where I keep my cashback bonuses, bank account bonuses, those kind of things, to cause the end result to be a $0 cost, because I have a personal rule that I never use my family budget to pay for my travels or vacations. So, ended up making it free. A good little trip, not the kind of thing that's going to make headlines. It's not like going to Bora Bora or the French Riviera or Malta or anything like that. But sometimes it's okay to get just plain solid value. Comments down below. Let me know what you think and smash that thumbs up button. If you do click the like button, I appreciate it. And as always, may your spending be frugal and may your points be plenteous. Thanks for watching.